Mm.
All right, welcome back to the Movie Well Marathon. I'm Andrew.
Woo! And I'm Mac.
Heck, yes. We
Woo!
are now in 30 minutes. We'll be halfway through another. Well, not technically, because we are going to try to watch Rebirth. I forgot that. Forgot that. We are not halfway through this marathon, but we will be soon. Um, but we are on Jurassic Park 3, directed by Joe Johnson. Came out July 18th, 2001. Starring our returning Sam Neill as Alan Grant and like technically Laura Dern as Ellie Sattler for like a second. We've also got Tia Leone as Amanda Kirby,
Yeah, I think so.
Alessandro Nivola as Billy, William H. Macy, Trevor Morgan, and Michael Jeter, and a handful of others that aren't as significant. So yeah, some cool people, and returning Dr. Grant and all that good stuff.
Mm.
So I have some interesting things I think to discuss with this one. Really, only interesting probably for me. So I would like for you to start as we do every now and then.
Overall impressions. I have definitely
Yes.
watched this film before. Going into the film, I could not remember what it was about. I couldn't do it. Even when they were watching the parasailing, I was like, oh yeah, okay. These two guys are parasailing and there's a crash and they end up on the island. But I can't remember what else happens after that. Like I couldn't
Wow.
remember.
Okay.
Um, and then as the story went, I was like, "Oh yeah, I've seen this. I've seen this. I've seen this." It was just a really weird experience where like I knew I'd seen the film before, and then as I was watching it, I was like, "Yes, this is all familiar." But if you'd asked me to describe the plot to you before I turned the film on, I would not have been able to do it. Point is, I actually think it's pretty good. I don't think it's gonna be anyone's favorite Jurassic film. Um, but they end up writing what I think is more or less a pretty successful self-contained story in a world that would have this environment. I feel like some things are definitely kind of cooked up a little bit, right? Like the fact that they were that close to Dinosaur Island, the fact that it's kind of convenient that the boyfriend was with the kid instead of the two parents, so we could have the two parents kind of like get back together over the course of the film, or at least implied to. We have a contrived situation that tricks Grant into going back to the place where
Always.
he absolutely does not want to go back to, right? There are some things that are a little, I guess, suspension of disbelief. The idea that Billy would take a dinosaur egg fully knowing that it would put him in danger, and we know that he knows it's putting him in danger because he wants Grant to give him the bag back in their little
Mm-hmm.
confrontation,
Mm-hmm.
but he still chooses to do it. And then, like, well, this might be too early to get into it, but the comment Grant makes about him being no better than the people
I
who
know.
created Jurassic Park,
It's a
like, and
little aggressive.
my first thought was, wow, that's aggressive. Like, that's way too much. But then I thought about it and I was like, actually, what he did might have been worse.
Mm.
Because the people who created the dinosaurs, sure, kind of unleashed a new level of predator on the planet, or re-leashed a new level of predator on the planet, depending on how you want to look at it. Um, and they maybe are more indirectly responsible for greater amounts of casualty and death. But they were going to keep them in cages in a place on an island, isolated from people, so if there was an incident, it would be controlled and contained, right? This guy knows about dinosaurs. He knows they're in a survival situation, knows there's no backup coming, still decides to pick up some eggs, puts the
Mm-hmm.
whole group in danger.
Mm-hmm.
It it might be worse.
So since we're on that, just for a second,
Yeah.
I have seen this movie many times, and I usually walk away thinking that Billy is a piece of shit. He's kind of dumb. He's just annoying. But like we say every week, having paid closer attention to this movie and trying to be more invested in it, I actually found Billy way more sympathetic. In that there's nothing that indicates that he was ever going to do that for greed reasons. He's so clearly actually invested in being a paleontologist, despite being this like honestly a well-rounded badass. Like he's a badass enough where it's like a believable badass. He's a young guy who goes on like believable adventures. He does skydiving and maybe other just basic shit. But he's not like the coolest person you've ever met kind of thing. So
Right.
I found his character a little more interesting, and I found his reasoning very believable when you like give him a chance. And I do think there's a little bit of, yeah, I've heard about the Raptors, but that's different until you've experienced it. And he might have thought that they could get away with it. So
But I mean,
it's not
that's the same logic that the people who created Jurassic Park used.
sure.
In the sense
Yeah.
that, like,
It's not smart. It is dumb. But even Grant admits later that he overreacted when he said it. So
well, and I think so too. Like, I think it's a really harsh thing to say to Billy. I think his heart and mind was maybe in the right place in the sense that, like, or maybe his heart was in the right place. Just in the sense that, like, he was not doing that to get wealthy.
Yeah.
He took a couple eggs so that they could fund their trip. They had just been confirmed that the check they thought was coming was not going to be there, right? So money's on the mind, and he's like, if I can sell these or even just use them to make some money, then we can keep our digs going. I can fund this. It's altruistic, honestly, is like the motivation behind it. But trying to bring the joy and wonder of live dinosaurs to anyone who wants to come see them is also kind of altruistic and ends up being life-threatening to the people who come to check out the dinosaurs. It's like, ethically, like, you've put them in a remarkably similar situation in the sense that they are taking risks with dinosaurs that will lead to consequences. The only real difference between the two of them is that Billy has more knowledge about dinosaurs, and he knows he's in a survival situation, which means he is intentionally increasing the risks in a situation that's already really risky. Like, I don't think that's what the film was going for, but the more I thought about that comment that Grant says, the more I'm like, it may have been mean, but it also may not have been mean enough. Like,
maybe. And it is interesting debate.
But we've probably talked about this too long already. Billy's a fine character. I think the act of him taking the egg and stuff, like, it works for the film. I was at first so offended that Grant would say anything like that, and then I thought about it for a second and I was like, actually, he has a point.
My only thing where I agree with Grant in the end that he overreacted is, we know because of the movies that the people who built Jurassic Park were doing it from an altruistic point of view, but we also know that Grant hates their fucking guts and thinks very, very poorly of them. So it's not, it's his comment just cuts super, super, super deep because of how he thinks of them, not necessarily because of any real world, reasons.
That's a great point.
But yeah. Anyway,
basically, he's telling his little mentee, his little student, like, protege, you are my worst enemy.
Yeah.
And that hurts.
Oh, that does hurt. So, yeah. My general thoughts on... Okay, first, I wanted to clarify something. You said it was a coincidence the boat was really close to the island?
What was that? Sorry, you cut out for a second.
In the beginning of the movie, you said it was a coincidence, or it was convenient that the boat was close to the island?
I said it's a little convenient the guy asked for the boat to get extra close to the island.
But that's what the company is. That's what they do. You see what it's called?
Yeah. What is it? Dino something?
Dinosaur. So, like, that's what they
Dinosaur, do. Yeah. And, like, I got all those pieces, but like, and I actually do not doubt that would happen just in general, in the sense that, like, there are people who go to tourist locations that should not be tourist locations, right?
Yeah.
But it being a Jurassic Park film is clearly a setup. Like,
of course.
Obviously a setup.
So my general thoughts are this movie is not great. It has some really cool things in it. But as a whole, I think it's, of the first three, it's the weakest one. I don't hate it like a lot of people do. Like, in the early 2000s, this was the worst Jurassic Park movie. It was awful. It was I don't get into all that.
I don't think it's all that. No.
I did spend a little bit of time thinking about what I would have done differently, and I wouldn't rework the whole thing, but I do think the weakest part of this movie is the plot, because I think there's an interesting, the concepts of this movie I think are absolutely amazing. I think getting Alan back in the saddle is really cool. Him having a student, mentee, like you said, is really cool. And the idea of suburban mom and dad being on the island could be really interesting. As it's set up, I'm so annoyed for like 75 to 80% of this movie because there are no redeeming qualities to most of our characters in this movie. You know, like Billy is brought along, and then depending on your perspective, he ends up being a shitbird, and Eric isn't in it enough really to be a protagonist. He's, I don't know if MacGuffin's the right word, but he's the goal. He's the thing we're trying to save. So it's Alan and the Kirbys, and Dad Kirby does some okay stuff in the end, but Mom Kirby is so annoying. She's so annoying.
They write her poorly.
I almost think they write her well.
Attention.
Like it's intentionally that she's annoying because she is the absolute antithesis to Grant in every conceivable way. And that might be the point, is to put him and the exact opposite of him on the island. And that could be cool. My issue is the reasoning and how they do it. I almost feel like the opening of the movie shouldn't be the parasailing thing at all, or if it is, they should rework it in a way where it's either not a mystery and not a twist that the Kirbys aren't rich enterprise people. Like I almost wonder if the movie should open with Paul and Amanda getting wind of it, being aware of it, and we follow their story for like the first 10 to 15 minutes. They bring Grant into it, and then it's like a mission that Grant, through some sort of things a better writer comes up with, is actually invested in this idea. Because for them to be these nobodies that have the wherewithal to hire these weird, adventurous mercenary types, and enough to manipulate Dr. Grant, but not enough to like pack something more than blouses and polos when they're going to be on this tropical island, and they're just going to go down there and start blasting bullhorns. Like, they're either the most stupid, brilliant people ever, or genius level morons. And if it was, they were genuinely, potentially, rich people who did hire Grant for a tour, and the pterodactyls that we know because of the end of the last movie are free, actually bring the plane down. And then later we get this Jumanji style, this dude who's been living on the island for X number of months or a year because of the pterosaur thing. It's like a cold open for the movie, but Eric in the beginning has no connection to anything. It's like this, and I think it should be reworked where it's a little less implied what happens, because that's a flaw for the whole movie. And I'm sorry I'm in a rant. I'm only going to go for another minute or two. The beginning of the movie, with what happens to the boat, that can only be the pterosaurs. That's the only thing it could be. So it's weird that we're being vague about it. And the last movie showed us that they are out and about. But then this movie shows us that moment with the gate not locking. Oh my. They're going to get out. They were already out. So I feel like what should have happened, the cold open, the boat should have Ben and Eric, who's just dad and son, not future stepdad, go up and up into the thing, right? And they're having fun. And then we stay on the perspective of the boat, and they go through the fog. And from the perspective of the guys driving the boat, things start getting shaky. Things are going crazy. What's going on? And then they come out of the fog, and the rope falls down, implying to us. And like maybe a pterosaur did just fuck with the boat a little bit, right? Like we could see the dinosaur, maybe, I don't know. But we then, as viewers, like, wow, things are still going on. This shit's crazy. This is wild. And then we cut to something else. We cut to Grant doing his thing. implying to us that those guys bit it because they were bit, they were eaten. And then we have this rich people tour to the island because Grant, the only thing on earth and heaven that could get him to go to the island is funding for his dig, for his students, for future research. And so they go, and they convince him because they're doing it the right way. But then those fucking pterosaurs, they bring us down. We're stuck there. And then we go through some sort of interesting, adventure. And he has to deal with these suburban, turds who don't know shit about exploring anything. Kind of having fun with what was said in the last movie about being on, safaris with rich dentists. But now Grant gets to deal with it. And then through that, we meet Eric. And Eric helps us get off the island. Because who has more knowledge than Eric at this point? Like, I think there's some really interesting things here with the guy being marooned on the island. And there being the posh people who shouldn't be here. And Grant having to deal with all of it. As it is, it's just dumb in so many places. Because I don't care if most of these people are going to be eaten. Because the only guy I care about is Grant, and I know he's not going to die, and he can't stand anybody. The aura that this man is giving off the whole time of being so annoyed is one of the best parts of the whole movie. Mm-hmm. Current rant over.
I think what you have set up with the stranded marooned guy on the island, there's a rich couple, the plane gets taken down by some dinosaurs, crash land, now you have to take care of them in a survival situation. All that works, and in fact feels like maybe the original draft of the film. But I think the film loses something if we don't have Eric as a kid. Because
he can still be a kid. I didn't mean to imply that it was like a grown man. I like the idea of being a kid. But have you noticed the trend that Jurassic Park has set up? I'm not going to rant, I promise. But if a child is on the island, it's for the same reason every single time. Divorced parents. That's why Lex and Tim are there. That's technically why the last kid was because Ian is divorced and it's dual custody, and that's why she's there. That's why Kelly's there.
So,
and why is Eric there?
Twist.
Parents are divorced. And why are the kids on the island in the next movie? Because the parents are getting a divorce.
They're getting divorced.
Every single one.
Okay, so plot twist. The entire franchise is actually just a metaphor for how awful it is for your parents to go through a divorce.
Hope your parents go through a divorce, kids, because if they do, you might get eaten.
Yeah, dinosaurs are going to come for you if divorce happens. Okay, so that's a great point. I still think Eric as a kid is important to the film because it kind of helps Ellen feel the wonder of the dinosaurs again. Even in the situation he's in. He's returned to a place that's probably filled with the most amount of trauma that he's had in his life. It's not complicated trauma, but it's survival, right? It's dinosaurs. He probably, the one line Eric says, you liked dinosaurs then, right? In his first book. And Alan, as a paleontologist, would struggle with maybe loving dinosaurs after almost being eaten by them. Right. And so when he's thrown back into that situation, when he's fully tricked really into going back into that situation, not just an accident, he's fully tricked into it. And he has to put up with all these people who don't know what they're doing. They don't know the importance of the situation. They don't really even know what they're doing to him or don't seem to care. It turns out pretty much everybody on the mission is not who they said they were, right? Yep. We do have pilots and some people with some heavy machinery and guns, but even our mercenary organization guy is just a travel agent who dabbles.
But our actual military or potential mercenary dudes, they're the first to go. Damn. But the suburban mom made it. But anyway, yeah, go on.
So the parent aspect feels a little, I don't know if campy is the right word, but it feels a little silly for the film, I guess. But I do like the sort of emotional arc that we get out of the parents and the situation. The one thing I don't like, and you're right, is Amanda. And I feel kind of rough saying that because I think she kind of I think she's written poorly. I don't think it's just the character. She ends up in more dangerous situations than the other characters do, and it's not because she's making dumb choices. There are a couple of times where she reacts impulsively, and then, like, I'm thinking of the tree, for example. She reacts impulsively to thinking she found her kid, and because she reacts impulsively, she falls down in the tree, gets caught, is hanging upside down, and then is getting bit at by raptors because they set a trap. Like, somebody had to do that, but the fact that it was her after she's the one who's come face to face with the monsters the most frequently in the film,
Bless you.
it's just like,
Bless you again.
it's not apparently. Yeah. Okay. But the fact that she's the one who is sort of almost narratively forced into the role of freaking out woman, and it's a little obnoxious. Even at the end, when they try to give her like a small redeeming moment where she's the one who like returns the eggs to the raptors, it feels weird because why couldn't they just put the eggs down and walk away? Why is she the one that like has to do it? And why did they single her out as the one who stole the eggs? She's never interacted with them. The scent of them probably wouldn't be on her.
What they're implying is that the Raptor Society is matriarchal.
That's
and
what I got too. Yeah,
it can tell that she's a female somehow.
I mean, it would make sense to me that males and females would smell pheromone differences.
Yeah, but like, how would a raptor know? Especially a raptor that very likely has never seen a human, because at this point they've been off of Isla Sorna for who knows how long. These are not the same raptors that dealt with the people in the last movie, and they may not have been around when the people were growing them in the first place. Like, I'm adding to your point. It's weird. They wanted to give her something to do in the end. And I think there's an interesting concept with a mother being on a John Wick style mission to get her kid back, who's stuck on like, if you wanted to bring in the divorce aspect again, but like make Ben the dad during his time, his weekend, took the kid to fucking Dinosaur Island, and she's gonna go full Sarah Connor, but she's gonna kidnap Alan Grant and be like, you are gonna help me get my kid back. Like, there's something there, man. There's something there, but instead, they don't even make a damsel in distress. They put this idiot mother making all the decisions on this island, just doing, and yeah, it's difficult because I don't root for her. I don't care about her story. I don't care about her goals because of how annoying it is. And I think that's weird storytelling.
Well, I genuinely do think it would just take a couple of tweaks in either the performance or the script to make her way more likable. Like, the moment where, they pull on the parachute or the sail and, Ben's degrading skeleton falls on her and, like, she's, like, wrapped up in the wires and freaking out. On paper or, like, in real life, you totally understand that freak out. But because they are in a high-stress situation where they have already seen a couple of bodies, and or at least one, or the remains of one over the windshield of the car, or the airplane, the super long freak out, and then total flight from the scene, and then when she returns, she doesn't even, like, have anything sad to say about her boyfriend. She's just totally focused on the kid. Like, I understand. I think that narratively works in the sense that they're writing her to be a mother primarily. Maybe Ben and her were probably pretty close for her to allow Ben to take her kid on a trip like this.
You would hope.
Yeah. But, it makes perfect sense to me that in a survival situation, her brain would go, focusing on getting my kid back, then I will grieve for my significant other. That makes sense to me. But that's not how the scene feels, especially when she freaks out for as long as she does and then immediately runs away. All you gotta do to fix that scene is have her freak out, sure, but instead of getting wrapped up in the cords, she gets tripped up where she gets knocked over, she falls down, he's kind of like on top of her maybe a little bit, and then she has to come face to face with what the situation is, rather than like trying to escape the entire time. She's face to face with the consequences and the choices, and she has to sit there and be like, this person who I care about is dead. Is my son also dead? Does he also look like this? Make it far more introspective and terrifying rather than a full-out freak-out moment. And you have a character who is wrestling with things and we have sympathy for, rather than a character who is kind of ultimately portrayed as pretty flighty and not very grounded and not very intelligent. She doesn't have the smartest character in the world.
No.
But to constantly put her in a position where she's just freaking out and she's just screaming really undercuts her as a character. No one really likes that. Even in a horror film, everyone's kind of like, all right, dude, we get it. You're freaked out. Do something.
Right. And it's also, there's, like you said, there's kind of this arc of them rekindling their relationship, but you never established if I wanted to care about the relationship in the first place. You introduced them as a happy couple. Like, there's also the potential of doing this, like, the It Takes Two game, right? Like, there's parents who are going through a tough time and they rekindle their relationship by doing something for their kid. Like, that's not a super original story, and you could do that. But that's also not here. They're fucking divorced! You've ended it! It's over. It's done. And it seems to have implicitly ended amicably. Because they at least, like, they're bickering on this island like any other couple. Like, we don't even know how or why the relationship ended, because again, it's really hard to tell if the movie cares or if it wants us to care, you know. And also, like, on this note, but not on this note, in my version, if you will, I think it'd be better if they just came across the sail and nothing more. Again, for us, think, oh, the sail drifted in after the guy and his kid were eaten, but it's also implying, well, actually, they clearly made it a little bit. You know, it's like when Eric shows up, it's not that surprising, because as it is, the camera shows us that Eric gets down just fine. He's barely 8 feet above the ground, which means Ben is only 8 feet above the ground. So what happens right after that? We never find out. What happened? Eric's not going to tell us in dialogue. We're not going to get some sort of flashback. We're never going to find out what happened to Ben. Who ate him? And how did Eric get away? Because it had to have happened.
I just kind of assumed that they got stuck in the tree. Like, probably what happened was they got stuck in the tree. Maybe Ben died on the way down, either through attack or he just, like, hit his head real hard. And if you're stuck up in a tree as a kid and you have a release harness, you can release yourself from your harness, but you can't climb back up to get the dead guy out of the tree. You probably just leave the dead guy in the tree, and then he gets eaten.
He's not dead when they land. He's talking in the video. He's the one who drops Eric. He's alive when they land. That's why it's frustrating.
I don't know.
There's so many ways you could have done that differently. It seems like they only did it in order to have that weird, freaky moment for Amanda. Like,
yeah. Why are we torpedoing this character? She could be interesting.
If it was raptors, then how did Eric get away? If it was compies, why did it take him so long to get down? If it was something bigger, why are there bones left? Like, I mean, come on. You could tell this is the first one not directed by Spielberg. But anyway. Moving on.
It's also really short. Like,
it is the shortest one. It's the shortest Jurassic movie.
86 minutes, I think. Which is... It feels short, but I also don't know that I really want it to be longer. I feel like it's one of those unique films where it perfectly tells the story. Well, not perfectly, but it very effectively tells the story it was trying to tell. And it doesn't feel the need to drag it on for an extra 20 minutes or 30 minutes. I kind of appreciate that.
I can see that to an extent. I do feel like if you move some things around, certain sequences could be longer. Because we have more individual, like, cool sequences with the dinosaurs, I would argue, that we did in the last movie. Just because of last one, it was just Rex. This one, we have some really cool fun with the Spinosaurus, which we'll need to talk about in a minute because we haven't yet. I genuinely love most of the pterodactyl sequence. We could talk about the parasailing, but their intro, the realization that they're in a bird cage, all of that kicks ass. All of it. Even ignoring the fact that they should have already been introduced and they should be out and about. I genuinely think you could have made them a secondary antagonist for the whole movie. The idea of having to juggle the velociraptors and the pterodactyls for the entire time, leading to, I think it could be done well, a in-jungle battle between pterodactyls and velociraptors where they're like jumping off of trees and tackling the pterodactyls. Like, brilliantly beautiful. Could have been amazing. As it is, that sequence is cool, and the moment, especially when like Billy is being rushed down the river and the focus changes to the one staring at them, that I would argue that moment, top 5 coolest moments of the entire franchise. That is just awesome. That does not go on long enough. The pterodactyl thing does not go on long enough, because I think for dinosaur nerds as well, this was like 3 movies coming, and we really only get like maybe 5 minutes of it. 5 minutes of our pterodactyls. That's all. Ooh, I want a little more. You know, just a little more. As it is, I think.
I don't know. I feel like a lot of the fighting sequences in films can be drawn out longer than they need to be. But that might just be me being a bit of a party pooper, in the sense that, like, I prefer action scenes with intention. And if we're just going to kind of dance around a little bit so that we can get in some more minutes of cool dino fighting, I'm the heartless person that cuts that up and makes it shorter. But I also perfectly understand why people would want to linger in that moment, because it's cool. It's cool to see dinosaurs going at each other. I mean, the introduction of the Spinosaurus is kind of iconic in this film.
The big kahuna, the new big bad.
They introduce him very effectively and very ruthlessly, and you're like, okay, we're not messing around, because especially since the T-Rex, even in the second film, kind of has a, I don't know if sympathetic quality is the right term, but
it's a naturalistic perspective on the T-Rex. It's just an animal in that time, and you're invading on its space. This motherfucker is a monster. He's a problem. And
so by not only upping the stakes by having him take out the T-Rex, they also establish him as sort of like a heartless beast situation. Like, not only is he ruthless, he will kill just to kill. And
the Spinosaurus ran so the Indominus could leap.
True. Then they have the whole like phone bit. And as funny as it is, it's also terrifying.
I think it's great. I think the phone bit is great.
A fantastic bit. Yeah.
I am torn on the shit scene, because it is believable, but it is also, I don't know, really need. I don't know. This movie also does the thing that we like to talk about. It took a lot of the first one, and it feels like it does amp it up to 11. Instead of a car, we're in a plane. Instead of a T-Rex, it's a Spinosaurus. Instead of digging through shit looking for berries, we're digging through shit trying to find our one lifeline off the island. Like, there's some consistent threads here, but somehow it just kind of feels more like repetitive instead of doing more with it. Maybe I'm being cynical in that regard, because the other thing about it, especially with the shit sequence, is just the last movie only really introduces one new dinosaur, really. Like, we have our safari sequence, and we get to see more of Parasaurolophus and Pachycephalosaurus. But the other ones that it really introduces, the Compy and the Stegosaurus, we have a sequence with them, which is awesome. And in this one, we have the pterodactyls. And then Ankylosaurus for a second, then it's gone. And then the Ceratosaurus, this red T-Rex looking thing with a horn on its nose, just for a joke, kind of, and then it walks away. So like, I'm mixed on how we're dealing with the things in this particular adventure.
No, I don't disagree, and a lot of it I feel like you can kind of take at face value, with the sense of like, this is maybe how it would be. Sure, all these things have the potential to hurt you, but not all of them have the interest in hurting you, even if they are carnivores, right? Like maybe they just ate already today. They're not going to kill again if they don't have to eat unless they're a vicious predator. And so it, like, you know, even in they have to kind of handle the different dinosaurs in different ways. And with the Spinosaurus, it's just run and hide. You got no chance to take them on, run and hide. You kind of have the same thing with the pterodactyls in this film, but it's a little bit, you can kind of take them on a little bit more in like a combative sense, because when they all swarm one person, that person's down for the count. You can't save them. But there was a bit of saving people from it, right? There was a little bit more going on there. And then with the raptors, especially with them amping up the whole intelligence and communication bit, that was basically a negotiation with them. Yeah. Which I actually liked. I think if you were to, that was maybe one of the things that made me hesitate a bit with the idea of like using the pterodactyls and the raptors in a fight sequence, because as visually cool and awesome as that would be, I think you could make it make sense. I liked that the raptors almost didn't have any violence in them in this movie, in the sense that like they were definitely hunting and they were definitely dangerous and they definitely would kill. Did they kill? Did they take somebody?
Yeah, they killed Udesky.
Udesky. Okay, they killed him. No. One person. There were a bunch of people who died. It's fine. But like, so like, yes, violence, they will kill you. They'll eat you. But the solution was not just run away, hide. The solution was, here, let us return the thing that you're missing.
Yeah.
Now let us just walk away.
Yeah.
It doesn't make a ton of sense, but I liked that it was different. I thought that it was cool that they had different solutions to the different dinosaur problems.
I'm more on that, but that's another thing that a lot of people I've seen have complained about. Like, that's a ridiculous sequence, them using the Velociraptor 3D print thing. I've always thought that was honestly kind of cool. I think some people have genuinely interpreted that as he was talking to them, and I always interpreted it as he just managed to confuse them. And if the helicopter whirring sound didn't show up at that moment, which you could argue is convenient, they probably wouldn't have gotten away with it. But this idea of him just confusing them with sounds that they'd recognize, I'm down for that, man. I actually thought that was kind of cool, because that was like Chekhov's 3D print in a way, or what's the better term for that? Like,
that was right.
Yeah, like you would not expect that thing to come back. You know, this is just a cool thing that.
Oh, I did.
See, you'd seen it technically, because I wouldn't have anticipated that, honestly, just because why would he have brought it? You know.
Okay. Seriously, let's think about this for a second. It's fine that you didn't make the connection, but like I'm sitting here and I'm thinking they make a whole point out of the raptors being super intelligent. They then 3D print a voice box, essentially, after making the point about that they talk to each other. And you were like, oh, this voice box of a dinosaur that we emphasize talking to each other is never going to come in handy ever again.
Well, okay, in my defense, first time I saw this movie, I was probably 7. But my other point is just from, if you were to watch this movie now, knowing nothing, sure, maybe. But also, realistically, in world, there's no reason for Billy to bring it. That's my bigger point. Like, if you were to think about it, because, like, yeah, as a viewer, you know they're going to end up on the island. But Billy goes on this adventure knowing, quote unquote, they're not going to be on the island. There's no reason to bring this fragile 3D printed thing in his camera bag and have that in the end be this thing that could be used. There's just no reason for it. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. I see your point. I don't know. Narratively, that felt like an obvious connection to me, just in the sense that, like,
I thought it was cool.
But I liked it. I thought it was cool. I would agree that I think they make a point that when he starts using it at first, that he doesn't really know what he's doing. But he does manage to mimic some variation of what it sounded like it helped. Yeah, when he was crying for help. So it's not that they successfully communicated. It's more just like, imagine if a dog walked up to you and said, help, in a sort of weird tone. You'd be like,
guys. Yeah.
Guys, the dog talked. And then the dog, like, gives you back your PlayStation and then walks away.
Right. God.
Like,
are we comparing new life to a PlayStation?
I don't know. I didn't want to say kid because that was even weirder.
Fair.
Like the idea of a dog giving you your kid back, but
Yeah.
like
it is interesting. That's actually funny you mentioned that because the resonating chamber is actually like a dog's larynx. It's nothing actually from a dinosaur or a brain thing or no. Yeah, it's just like a dog's throat that they made.
No.
That's
so
fun.
like, I agree in the sense that I don't think he opened dialogue between the two species,
Right.
but I think he did communicate enough that they kind of were like, I don't know what to do in this situation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
On that topic,
arrived, so.
yeah, which is fun. Good for Ellie. That's great. On the topic of the Velociraptors, though, I wanted to share what I thought the movie was telling us, and I want your opinion on it. So,
okay.
I was really excited when I was a small youngling and saw that the Velociraptors were starting to grow feathers. Because I thought that was saying to us that with every generation of dinosaurs, the DNA is becoming more and more pure. I don't know if that's actually what the movie's saying, so I was just curious as to what you think of that.
Yeah, no, I actually considered that as well, with the sense that they seem to be developing feathers. They also make a really strong point in this film, or at least Grant makes a really strong point in this film about them not technically being prehistoric dinosaurs.
Yeah.
And I think that's actually a really good distinction to draw, just in general. I'm big on the devil's in the details kind of thing. And it's been clear from the beginning that they never had a complete sequence of dinosaur DNA. They had to fill in the gaps using other sort of amphibian or reptilian DNA. Mostly amphibian, though, right? Frog.
That's the one that caused the issue. They say in the movie that it was frog, but we find out more and more in every movie that they just kind of play with whatever they have.
Right. So the more gene editing that goes into it, the less actual dinosaur it is. I mean, these dinosaurs reproduce, maybe not asexually, but they're reproducing with only female in the species, or at least that's how it was set up originally. Yeah. Which means that they're not prehistoric dinosaurs. They're not the same species. That's kind of like the definition of a species, is how they reproduce and create more of themselves. So I actually really love that point. And the idea that if left to nature, somehow the DNA would return to the prehistoric state, that doesn't make any kind of scientific sense from how I understand it, because DNA doesn't self-edit to return to the previous state. It self-edits to highlight the survival elements. Well, DNA doesn't, but that's how natural evolution and natural selection works, right? So, if anything, those changes in their biology, their anatomy, would be indicative of changes to their current environment, rather than it would be to like a return to pure dinosaur DNA. Although I will say my first thought when I saw the feathers was, oh, are they reverting? And then I thought it through and I was like, that doesn't make any kind of sense.
Well, my non-paleontological biological degree mind was, if the velociraptors on the factory floor, as John Hammond said, were, let's say, 85% velociraptor, 15% frog or iguana or chameleon or whatever, and then one of those mates with another one, then the next generation is like 90% velociraptor and 10% other animal, and so on and so forth, as it's more and more velociraptor being added, like different variety of velociraptor being added. Sure, like maybe it would get weirder because of the different genetic adding that they've done, but my non-academic brain was just like the genetic math of every generation it's more velociraptor, eventually getting to the point where it's like weeded out all of the frog, all of the lizard, all of the whatever, so that in like 100 years they'd look way more like actual velociraptors because their DNA is worked out those kinks. It's been able to go back to, and I know that maybe doesn't make sense, but neither does most of what they do here. So I thought that's maybe what they were going to do.
Fair.
Yeah.
If they were to state it explicitly in the film, that would be something where I'd go, suspension of disbelief, sure, let's go for it. But I'm pretty sure that's not how the DNA of this situation would work. I'd like,
Probably
because
not.
like, if we're talking about like mixing different sources of DNA in maybe kind of a gross analogy, we're talking like different ethnicities in the human genome, then your math might kind of work out, because if you like have one white person in your lineage, then and you like never reconnect with that DNA, you're constantly in, I don't know, a South Asian Indian like heritage, then the DNA would eventually reduce their percentage of white. But that's not the situation we have. We have a bunch of 85% dinosaur, 15% frog things that are mixing with each other, which means that same percentage, I think, would travel down to their offspring.
I guess that's a good point.
Yeah, it's not like they have a natural strain to reconnect to. The base operation is with that frog DNA, and I don't think that would ever be edited out or removed unless it for some reason was not good for their survival, which then natural selection would take that out. But arguably it's the strongest part of natural selection for these guys because of the way that they can reproduce kind of regardless of gender or sex.
Fair point. We never come back to this idea either, and I always wish that we would. But so it's we never really get clarification on it.
We kind of move away from dinosaurs in the wild after this film, don't we?
A little. I thought that the trailer for this new movie was implying we were going back to this island and seeing my theory brought to life, because the Spinosauruses look more like what scientific Spinosauruses would look like, but it's not. It's Site C, so this is something completely different. So, yeah, probably never gonna get a definitive answer to that. Speaking of which, do you have any questions about the Spinosaurus? Because you rightly should.
It looks purple. That's cool.
Okay. Did you wonder where this was during the last movie?
I mean, a little bit, but it's a large enough landmass that it could have just been taking a nap on the other side.
I suppose you're one of those viewers. Fine. You didn't ask all the nitty-gritty questions.
All right, where was the Spinosaurus in the last film?
It wasn't there.
Oh, what happened? How'd it get there then? This is convenient.
Yeah, so actually, after the events of the second movie, InGen went back and was doing more experiments, and there's three dinosaurs on the island that actually weren't there at the time. It was the Corythosaurus, which was there with the Parasaurolophus, the Ankylosaurus, which we get all of 3 seconds of, and the Spinosaurus. And they, so actually, technically speaking, the Jurassic Park franchise is really, really cool in how they promote and play with the lore. There's a canon website you can go to, which is like a place where they dump a bunch of information. So what had happened was our Mr. Wu and InGen went back to Site B doing more experiments, and unbeknownst to them, 2 scientists who work for Biosign or whatever, the one Dodson's company, they were there and they made the Spinosaurus. And eventually it got too big and they let it go. It's wreaking havoc on the ecosystem. It's an actual menace. It's also strongly implied, but not confirmed, that Henry Wu was doing a genetic crossbreeding experiment to try to add feathers to the dinosaurs, and that experiment got out of hand and he had to abandon it. So not only, it wasn't a joke, the Spinosaurus ran so that the Indominus Rex could leap, because it's undercutting it to say that Spinosaurus walked. The Spinosaurus is our first real genetic hybrid monster, and that's why it's such a menace. It's the Indominus Rex's big brother.
Behavior a little bit, because it fully is just a monster, a predator in this film. Like the two other films very clearly frame their most dangerous dinosaurs in like a sort of naturalistic predator way. The raptors even are hunting. They're using group, tactics to hunt down their prey, corner it, and eat it. Like that's what's happening. But the Spinosaurus is like just killing stuff and not stopping at all. There's no real motivation other than I see you, I take you down, I kill you. And then I think it's fair to say that it kind of pursuit predator style chases down humans
a little bit, yeah.
Which is a lot of work for what would be a pretty small snack for this guy.
Well,
but
some people have interpreted that as you can see when Cooper dies, blood going over the windshield. That's not from him. That's from the Spinosaurus. They clipped it with the propellers. True. So some people interpret it as it sees them as something that's injured it. And so it's got a grudge against them, which is maybe giving it too much credence. But I don't know. I kind of like that idea.
See that? I think that makes as much sense as him hunting him down just because it's prey, if not more sense. So, I mean, it's clearly malicious. Like, it's out to get us in this film. And I think the tone shift works really well. I really do. There's a chance that if you switch from a totally naturalistic point of view on the dinosaurs to this aggressive monster hunting you down, that it would feel kind of like forced and theatrical, just like, we need a threat. Let's make a threat. We're not going to think too hard about the threat. It's just got a lot of teeth. It's real big and it's coming at you. But it feels like in this film, because they balance it out with the other ones, I mean, even the pterodactyls, as they take out a character that we really like we like Billy, they also threaten, the kid in the group. So they threaten the two characters who are youngest in the group and who we feel most sympathy for. And yet at the end of the film, when they're flying, we're like, that's probably not great for wherever they land, but best of luck to them.
It's so majestic. That's so pretty.
Yeah. It feels like a return to that naturalistic moment. So, like, whatever they do with the Spinosaurus, even though it is clearly more aggressive than the others, it doesn't ruin the general statement about how dinosaurs were just creatures living and doing the best they could as animals do in the wild. And they even kind of emphasize that in this movie with the way that they have Dr. Grant return to his love for dinosaurs through the eyes of Eric, even as Eric has been hiding out, trying not to die on this island filled with dinosaurs for the past, 5 weeks, did they say?
8 weeks.
8 weeks. 8 weeks! That's crazy! That's a ridiculous amount of time to survive on your own, let alone on an island full of predators like that.
If anything, it's kind of bullshit, but whatever.
Yeah.
Just a bit. On that note, as real quick, we're almost at our time. I do like how Alan, when he gets to Eric, he's immediately back into Dr. Grant dad mode, just like without a hitch. It's almost kind of weird that they try to establish in the beginning of the movie that Grant's not good with kids. Bull fucking shit. You've shown us several times that when this man is presented a situation in which he has to be taking care of a kid, he is perfect. I'm not buying it. You're not going to convince me that he's awkward with children. He's clearly great with kids. You've shown us this over and over and over again. He has conversations with them like they're people, and it just works. It's so like, oh, what are you doing here? It's like, oh, your parents invited me along. They didn't kidnap me. I'm not going to tell you this true thing that's going to upset you. Like, he's the tact. This man is so good. So good. He's praising the child too. He's like, I can't tell you how amazing it is what you've done, what you've accomplished. If anything, I'm proud. I'm proud of you, Eric. You don't know me, I don't know you, but I'm proud of you. Like, it's anyway, sorry, go on.
No, it's true. He's great with kids, and it's kind of weird that the films try to emphasize the whole he's not great with kids naturally, but put him in a struggle situation with kids plus dinosaurs, and he's great. And I don't feel like that's inconsistent with the character. I actually feel like the actor does a great job with it in the sense that he's just an intellectual. He's just an academic. And people expect you to dumb yourself down for kids, which is sometimes appropriate, but I would argue it's less often appropriate than people expect. When I interact with a young kid on an intellectual level that they find challenging, I'll bring it down. but they can understand things a lot better than you think they can. Like that kid who's real young picked up on the carnivore thing real fast. And it's because he was sitting there talking to him about the differences between the two dinosaurs. Like, it just because we are attempting to engage the kid in a conversation that requires them to think a little bit does not mean that we are treating the kid inappropriately. And it doesn't mean that should a situation come up where the kid needs a little bit of censorship or adjustment to the tone, you can't do it. Like, when in a survival situation, he's like, it is not appropriate for me to be freaking these kids out right now. So I'm going to tell them the truth, but tell them the truth in a way that makes them calm rather than freak out. Right. And he has like moments in the first film where it's not perfectly smooth or clean. And he obviously feels awkward around kids in the first film. But like, I don't know. I feel like it's weirdly kind of a perfect example of how kids are treated. That doesn't really make sense if I say that kids are like infantilized by society, but they kind of are in the sense that like, yeah, you do have to cut things down for kids a little bit. Kids are not adults. We should treat them differently than we treat adults. But at the same time, like,
that doesn't mean they can't do things. People.
Yeah, it doesn't mean they can't do things. It doesn't mean they can't understand things. It doesn't mean they aren't processing new information. Kids' brains are learning new information at a faster rate than they will ever learn information again. It's not appropriate to assume that they can't have intellectual conversations. So
it also helps when they read your book.
Yes, and enjoyed your book. And like, if the kids are nerds, then definitely connect with them on that, right? Like, I mean, I think it's a shame actually that Lex's computer hacking skills is never engaged by any of the adults in any of the films. Like, I mean, she's only really in the one film, but that's an impressive skill for her to have. Arguably a little plot convenient.
Sure.
But there are people who she would have been able to have an interesting conversation with based off of that skill set, and it just doesn't happen. I think that's kind of a miss, if we're being honest.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We're kind of at our time. Is there anything else that we want to say just before we go?
Solid film. Probably nobody's favorite, like I said in the beginning, but it does its job. I think it's a decent story. I'd watch it again.
This is one where I have a lot of fun with it. I like it, especially more than other people, but for me it is a C-, and in my mind it's not a whale. It might
I'd probably give this one a B-.
Okay. Yeah, because
I think it works. It's not perfectly executed, but I think it works.
I think it technically works for what it is. However, I think it's kind of pointless. Like, the second one is moving us forward and how the world is dealing with this situation, with this new science, with this exploration of it. This movie isn't doing anything. It's like a long weekend where Grant is kidnapped by some idiots. Like, and there's so much that we really didn't talk about how dumb that really is, because Grant doesn't verify anything. Nothing. He didn't verify a thing. And it's a fun conversation moment where he's like, oh, he said that we needed someone who's been on the island before. It's like, yeah, but I didn't tell you to kidnap somebody. And Grant says, I've never been to this island. It would have just rolled out of my mouth very naturally. We want to go to Isla Sorna, and we need a guide. It's like, oh, well, I've never been to Isla Sorna. Like, that's just natural conversation. And Grant says nothing. Like, there's so much bullshittery that has to happen in order for the whole movie to even happen. So for me, the pterodactyls are awesome, but not long enough. The Spinosaurus is cool, but kind of just cool. I mean, it's fun. The raptors are amazing, but it's like really the most interesting thing. We really don't ever explore it, because we go into a new trilogy now of exploring raptor things from a completely different perspective. So it's almost like we're setting up this idea that needs further exploration that we don't get. So for me, C-. But I really like it. It's like really fun, It's like it's pizza. It's bad pizza. I'm still gonna eat it, but there's better pizza.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't mind that it doesn't move the greater world building forward. I I enjoy a good small story within the greater scope of things. And I feel like this fits that category where it's kind of like not a complete follow through, maybe is the way to say it. It's not, now that we've had a dinosaur running around in like mainland US, where do we go from here as a society? It's more of a, there's an island full of dinosaurs. Tourists would be dumb and go to that island full of dinosaurs. Our parents, when panicked, will drag in a bunch of people to save their kid and possibly doom everybody. Like, a lot of this just feels like a little contrived, but kind of natural domino effect sort of situation. And I like that it's a smaller story in, like, the greater picture. Like, they're just like, there's an island full of dinosaurs on Earth now. That's pretty cool. What goes on that island? Dumb tourists. That's what goes on that island.
I suppose. I do, like I said before, I think there's different ways you could do it in which you end up connecting with the characters better. Because as they did it, I don't care about them. They're all being dumb.
I'd agree. I'd agree.
Yeah. So, yeah, 'tis not a whale, but I'm really excited for next week because there's so much cool stuff to talk about with the first Jurassic World. So this is going to be awesome.
Yeah. I look forward to it.
Actually, did you say definitively? Is this a whale for you? I didn't know if I missed it.
I don't think I did say. I don't know if it's a whale.
Okay, cool movie,
it's a good film.
But not a whale.
Yeah.
Fair enough. All right, bye.